This is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about two more sacraments that there have been innovations as of late that I think have taken away from the meaning of these sacraments. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Amen. Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. I would definitely recommend you check out the first part of this series where we talked about confession and communion. Today we're going to talk about marriage and funeral mass, which really isn't a sacrament. So what have we seen in the last 20, 30, 40 years? We've seen in regards to marriage, well, we know the marriage rates dropped, the cohabitation rates have gone up, and we know that the birth rate in the United States is the lowest it's been in 100 years. We know people are waiting later to get married. And I don't necessarily think any of these things are good things. But what you certainly see, I think, in Catholic matrimony, and again, I understand a lot of you subscribers are traditionalists and you go to a TLM or a Narrate or so forth. But if you go to Our Lady of Suburbia, as Father McTeague says, or St. Typical's parish, when you go to those parishes, you're going to notice that a lot of Catholics who want to get married in the beach, they want to get married in the barn, especially if you are kind of like Texas Hill Country, a lot of barn marriages. And they don't understand the importance of getting married in a church. And I think part of this is connected to they don't understand the meaning of the sacrament of matrimony. A lot of Protestant denominations, not all of them, but a lot of them don't see marriage as a sacrament. But in the Catholic Church, it's definitely a sacrament. It's an act instituted by Christ to confer grace. And there's a lot of graces that come from the sacrament of matrimony. And as such, marriage, by canon law, a wedding has to be done at a church by a priest. Now, there's going to be there's some abuses. Like my brother, for example, got married at a Catholic church with a priest, but also a Methodist bishop, or Methodist priest, I should say, because his wife was Methodist. She later converted to Catholicism quite quickly afterwards. But I think it was more for family reasons. They did it. But you'll see some abuses, but as a whole, you'll see like a young Catholic couple be like, I want to get married in the beach. It's like, no, the church says you got to get married in the church. And then they get mad. And so sometimes they get so mad that they snub it at the church and still get married at the beach or the barn by their friend. That is not a sacramental marriage. Now, some of you might be like, well, who cares? Well, by canon law, Catholics are beholden to certain things. They must marry a Catholic, for example. But it is more of that, I want the church to conform to my will rather than I conform to the church as well. So instead of researching and seeing, like, why does the church teach that we should get married in church and why it's important to have a nuptial mass, they're just like, I'm going to do what I want. And I think this is a combination of two forces that are actually connected. One is just, they have Protestant friends, and Protestant friends or secular friends are getting married in barns and on the beach and so forth. So they're like, why can't we do that? And connected to that is just the rise of secularism, right? They see it on television, and they see the church, or really Christianity in general, as some antiquated, ossified thing that needs to catch up with modern times. And we've seen what happens to mainstream Protestant denominations that have adapted their teachings to catch up to modern times, a la the Methodists, the Anglicans, and so forth, and who have their numbers have dropped precipitously. So that's a problem. The other one I want to say quickly is the requiem. So typically as a Catholic, when you die, you have a funeral mass. It doesn't have to be big. It could be at a chapel, but you typically have a funeral mass. And you see this, and we talked about on the episode on judgment, this kind of prevailing mentality that when you go to these Catholic funerals, everyone's going, you're going to heaven. Mima died, she's in heaven. She's in heaven, heaven. And of course, this is not aligning with Catholic teaching on death. We don't know. We have an earlier episode on this. We don't know if we're saved. Now, in many Protestant denominations, of course, they believe in salvation by faith alone. They're going to heaven. So this is just another Protestant infiltration of the Catholic faith, and certainly secular, and kind of just feel good hallmark sentimentality of fill in the blank, died, they're in heaven. And I get it pastorally why it's done. But that's not the teaching of the church necessarily. So I think it's better that another abuse that you sometimes see is a eulogy would be done in lieu of a homily. No, that's against the missal, the instructions for the Mass. No, homily must be done. And I understand why maybe the priest didn't know the person. I understand that pastorally, but again, you can't bend. Go to the 4-part series I did on liturgical abuses that drive me crazy. You can't change the general section of the Roman Missal to fit your need. As a priest, you are essentially an employee of the church, and you need to kowtow the party line, so to speak. So you can't have any of these innovations. But you see this kind of this modernity and this Protestantism creep into the Catholic death. So, for example, we know that the church has allowed cremation. That's a recent innovation, as long as the ashes stay in a ciborium or they stay intact and they're buried or put in a crypt. And traditionalists have an issue with this because it's been centuries teaching, and this goes back to what separated us from the pagans back in antiquity, is that we believed in the resurrection of the body, therefore we believed in interring the body, whereas the pagans, and you still see other cultures around the world who just cremate because there's no attachment to the body and there's no obvious belief of resurrection. But you'll see also some Catholics who are not well catechized, just like with the marriage, who'll be like, well, Mima died and Mima wanted to have her ashes scattered in the river, or each of us wear a bracelet that's got some of her ashes. No, you can't do that. And so again, they get mad at the Catholic Church for saying that, no, your body should be preferably buried. That's still the preference. But if you're going to cremate it, it needs to be intact and put in an urn in a sacred place. So again, this is like the other infiltration of secularism in Protestantism, because people see their Protestant friends doing it and they're like, why can't we do it? And then instead of aligning their will to the will of the church, it's vice versa. So you see this a lot in funeral masses. You see lots of times there is no rosary done the night before, in fear of alienating Protestants who might be at the service. And of course, you see lots of times at the funeral mass, if there is one, that the music is just not sacred. They're not doing the tried old liturgical prayers that you're supposed to do at a requiem. And then you don't see the priest many times telling non-Catholics who are not in a state of grace not to receive the Eucharist. And of course, if you're a Catholic not in a state of grace, you're not supposed to receive the Eucharist too. But you don't see that, and it's just frustrating. And look, I'm not blaming Protestants for this. This is just what all Christians are dealing with now, which is the infiltration of secular values in our religion. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And these are just 2 sacraments that I wanted to cover. So in closing, Catholics, young Catholics, old Catholics, be obedient to the church and try to understand why the church teaches that you must get married in church. They're looking out for your own benefit. There's so many graces you get from a sacramental marriage that you don't get from the JP. I mean, a marriage at the JP is not a sacrament. It's a natural marriage, assuming you're not previously married, but you're not getting the graces. So that when the church says do it at a mass by a Catholic priest per canon law, you should want to do it, right? Where's the humility? Where's the penitence? You should want to do it. And same thing when Mima dies or when I die, whatever, because obviously we're all going to die. Again, the church has a teaching. Follow the church, and hopefully the priest in the parish, in the funeral home or whatever, are also going to do it that way. And if you are, let's say when my mother dies and the priest is like, yeah, you can eulogize her in the homily. Don't feel bad about correcting him and say, Father, according to the Roman Missal, you have to give a homily. It's not right. We can eulogize at the rosary or at the somebody's house afterwards, but no. I mean, please stick to the requiem instructions we've had for. I mean, honestly, for the entirety of Christian history, or like Catholic history. Please stick to this. But either way, please post in the comments. Let me know if you were one of these Catholics who wanted to get married on the beach, or if you've gone to one of these funerals. I'd love to hear from you. Please hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Share with other people. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.